So let's talk about that. I mean, foreign land,
Yes.
international, you're creating a business.
Yes.
So talk about what that was like going through the process of creating it. Because here, when
Yes.
we think about creating business, we think LLC, we got to get an attorney, we got to get things trademarked. What was that process like doing it in Dubai? And then I guess the follow-up part is that, I mean, this is a country where the woman's role is a little bit different. So talk about that as well.
Okay.
Is it?
Well, or is it?
That's a good question. So for the first part of your question, as far as setting up a company and being there, I didn't want to try to figure things out on my own. I'm one of those people that I'm going to pay for information. So I partnered with a company that could actually help me to start my business. So instead of going on Google and trying to piece together the situation step by step by step, I actually hired a company that helped to put me through that process. So I said, hey, this is my vision. This is what I want to do. I want to start a company. So just to give you an idea of how the process works, you partner with a company in the local area of Dubai. You decide if you want to be in a free zone on the mainland area. The mainland is obviously going to give you more rights to be able to sell and do what you need to do for the full city. And then free zone has certain pockets. So they set my company up and you pay per activity that you want to do. So because I have a real estate company, I actually have to pay for leasing. I have to pay for sales. I have to pay for commercial. So you identify kind of what activities you want to have within your licensing. The other thing that's unique about the Dubai real estate market when it comes to like starting a business and getting residency is that they actually require a medical exam. So you also have to take a medical exam to make sure that you don't have any infectious diseases because they will decline your application. So that to me is, that's different, right? A lot of countries don't think that far ahead, but they're trying to preserve the lifestyle of what they have developed. So that's another part of it. And then obviously you get your Emirates ID, which is very, very important. You can't move around without your Emirates ID. It's like your rights of passage. Like everything that you do is tied to that Emirates ID. And it's so efficient, right? Because your license is tied to it. Your medical history is tied to it. Your address, everything that you need to get to whatever door you need to go into is on that Emirates ID. So it's a really efficient system. I like the way they do things.
We met a few people from New York when we were there that moved from New York to Dubai, and they were saying how much they loved it, how peaceful it was, how it was just a change of scenery that they needed, and they didn't really have any plans on coming back to America, like come back to visit family, stuff like that.
Yes.
It was like it just doesn't make sense to go through the hassle and hassle of living in America, especially like, a city like New York City, when you can just live in the UAE with a much better quality of life.
Yes.
So, all right. So you get all of this.
Hold on, before we go there.
The woman in business.
Yeah. Because, I mean, what you're saying is true, right? Maybe it's not different. So, like, that's even interesting.
Yeah.
So why did you say it's different? Because I'm asking Troy.
Why am I saying it's different?
Because,
I mean, stereotypically, right, it's a predominantly Muslim country, we know that in the role of, in countries with Muslim populations, we see that the woman's role is a little bit different than in American society. And so I'm thinking of it as an American woman going into a Muslim populated country, where there's some obstacles, were there different type of like stipulations that you had to do to get into business?
But even that, but that's not necessarily, but this is an important stereotype. Because it's not necessarily true though, right? Because there's so many different countries. Every country has different cultures. America has a different culture, right? So it's like, all right, if you go to a country like Nigeria, that's going to be different than a country like Indonesia, which is going to be different than a country like Saudi Arabia, or different than a country like UAE. So I think that it's an important misconception, because there's women rights issues in America.
Absolutely.
If you really think about it, like there's women disparities where we live.
Absolutely.
So even that conversation might be not totally true. But I think that it's important to address that, because it's like people have misconceptions, which can lead people not to go, or can lead people to have already a barrier that's built up. But everywhere has different cultures.
Yes.
It's very important to respect the culture that you're in, including American culture. American culture is different, right? Like people come to America, they respect the American culture. So what's your experience?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said, stereotypical.
Yes. No, I think that was actually a great response to that, because there are a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions that we've been taught over time. And I will say this, it's not necessarily just the stereotypes, it's the history, right? So part of it is true based on history. However, now where we are in 2023, a lot of that has been lifted. A lot of those rules and laws have been changed. So that's the beautiful part about being in an emerging market. I've now been able to enter into a market in a time where they are willing to be more open and embrace women in business. So it's a beautiful time for me. And one of the things is, like, as you mentioned, because there's disparities all across the world, oftentimes we look at that as like, oh, I can't do it because I'm a woman. Maybe I'll just wait, or I need to have this male partner. I need to do this. For me, my perspective is, how do I change this complete disadvantage into a USP? And by doing that, going into a market or an area where women are still learning their voice, they're still trying to figure things out. Whereas in America, a lot more women have, like, there's women empowerment and they're pushing, and there are a lot of woman-owned businesses here in the US versus going into a market where they're still trying to figure it out. So what does that mean for me? Now I get to have a greater opportunity to stand out as a woman in business, to say, hey, let me show you all, let me be a pioneer in the space. Let me teach you guys how to conduct business, how to do business, because now the women in those areas are starting to see themselves more as entrepreneurs and more as business women. So now I've really been able to position myself, if you will, as a thought leader, as a businesswoman in the region.
You become the authority.
I become the authority figure, you know, and that was another reason that I decided to relocate from Atlanta, is because I was really starting to feel like I was outgrowing my environment. It's just like a shark in a tank, right? The shark is only going to grow as large as the tank will allow. But if you put that same shark in the ocean, it'll grow to be over 8 feet tall. And I was feeling like, we put so much emphasis on toxic relationships. We'll say, oh, this man did this to me, this woman did this to me. But do we really think about how toxic sometimes our environment is to our growth? And so when I realized, like, I wasn't waking up feeling inspired. I'm going to the events, I'm seeing everybody that I always know. I was ready to shake things up. It's time to see new things, meet new people, have a more diverse clientele base, have a more diverse friend group. Dubai is in the center of the world. I'm meeting people from every different part of, walk of life. And so I think people need to give more credence to, like, their environment as well.
So let's talk about, you talked about being a woman.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been a hurdle for you?
It has not been a hurdle from the degree of it's impossible. Because I think it's been painted as if, like, it can't be done. You can't wear this. You can't do this. You can't say this. But I will say that there's still, like, there's some little residue, from what it is, because it's still growing. So you still have to respect the culture. For example, this isn't something that I would wear into a government building. Where, you're going to cover up, you're going to make sure that you are respectful. And I don't have a problem with it. Another barrier, let's have some transparency. Another barrier that I did experience as a woman was that I'm a single mother. And so because I've never been married and I've never been divorced, I couldn't provide a a marriage certificate or a divorce certificate. And that's one of the prerequisites for your child to get a visa. And so because I couldn't provide those documents, I experienced some hurdles, some additional fees, in getting his visa. So it actually kind of held him up from being able to start school. So although it was frustrating for me, it was also like, Denise, you have to give credence to the culture. That's not how things run here. They admire families, they push families. The men have more rights to the children in this part of the world. For example, a lot of women won't get a divorce because they know that their husbands can get the kids. So things are different. It's just about respect, and then you take the good with the bad.
I think that it's an important conversation to have, because as Americans, we kind of have a superiority complex.
Yes.
Where we think that how we do things is how everybody should do things. And if somebody doesn't do things the way that we do things, then they're uncivilized, or they're savages, or they're backwards. And it's not necessarily true. It's just a different culture. And I remember even they were talking to the president of, I believe, Kenya. I don't want to get the country wrong, but it was a country in East Africa, I believe. And they had some rules on gay marriage. It was not allowed. So the guy from Britain, I think it might have been Pierce Morrison, one of these guys from Britain, they were saying that, it's a backwards way of thinking and different things of that nature. And he was like, well, you're trying to force your value system on us when we're a country that's just 50 years old.
Yeah.
Like when your country was 50 years old, you had all kinds of child labor laws and all kinds of issues that you haven't still to this day fully dealt with, racism, different things of that nature. So it's like, you're trying to impose a value system on us where just let us get to that point if we get to that point, right? Or just respect it and don't come.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that's extremely important for Americans to understand. Like, when you go to somebody else's home, it's not like to say like I'm gonna impose my will on your culture.
Yes.
And that's even something that Swiss Beats told us, where he was like, talking about Saudi Arabia, and he talking about money, and he was like, the cheapest thing you can do is ask for money. Like, you think you getting over because you overcharging for a show, and that's not the best way to go. He's like, if it was up to me, I'd do a show for free.
Yeah.
Because I understand the long game. Like, I'm trying to, like, it's not about me trying to, beat you over the head and get a quick lick. He's like, we got to stop thinking about that. Like, it's about really experiencing the culture, learning the culture, seeing how you can fit in, how you can add value to the culture, as opposed to just coming over with that's really like a European mindset of being a conqueror.
Yes.
And that's something that I think, you have to, when you go to different parts of the world, you got to be diplomatic. You can't come as like, this is how we are coming.
Yes.
And we are going to impose our life on you.
You cannot.
Because it's not their way of life.
No, it's not. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, going there with an open mind is the number one thing that you have to do. You cannot Americanize every experience.